Thank you, Aftaf. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasulihil Kareem. Thank you. I am pleased to join the Muslim American Society Annual Convention this year. And as usual, under this period of trials of pandemic, we pray that our brothers and sisters in America are safe and healthy, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the healing of those who may be unwell, and express my condolences to those who have lost family members and friends. Although we could not have imagined that our lives would be so significantly disrupted by the pandemic, we certainly cannot ignore the fundamental reality of the fragility of life and the institutions and organizations and habits which have come to shape our daily lives. Call it a democracy, call it a fragile one, or call it whatever system that you have, the fragility is being exposed. Grinding poverty, gross inequality, injustices, and now is being further exposed more than ever before. Now, our moment is a world anxious for normality. The old normality that, with all its shortcomings, has acquired a coat of nostalgia. Many of us, and many are fearful or cynical about the talk of new normals. Will it be another jobless revival with more work for machines and less place actual human beings? Does more flexibility in employment mean less job security for the ordinary worker? I personally am quite cynical with some of these new jargons because people talk about a new normal, but the old ways of doing things, the resistance to change, the unpreparedness to take bold, effective measures is there among the political elite and general elite in most countries. And I think United States of America is no exception. What is beyond question is that pandemic has reacquainted millions with real grinding poverty. Not since the Great Depression have so many, in so many places, stood in line for handouts. And Malaysia is not precluded. And I've seen for myself neighbors, communities encountering difficulties which I've never seen in the past, except they say during the Japanese occupation in the 40s. The financial security hard-earned for so many has been undermined, hollowed out, and put so much life at risk. How do we build back better when so many fear for the building blocks they have left? The pandemic has revealed much of what ails in our societies. This is known. I mean, I've seen the discussions, the discourse, very lively in the United States. And I think this is where you Muslims in the United States have the advantage. You have lots of problems. There's Islamophobia, there's a lot of enmity, there's a lot of prejudice. Notwithstanding, you have that capacity to enter into a reason, a dialogue, and discourse. And my limited opportunity to be there, particularly around the International Institute of Islamic Thought, with the late marhum Jamal Bazanji, for example, I've seen, and the capacity, the resilience of our intellectuals, Muslim intellectuals in America, to embark and to enter this reason, discourse, and give so much hope and aspirations to so many. But what I have said consistently in a broader context is that the nation's strength, whilst looking at the failure of healthcare coverage, health infrastructure, standard of education, but we cannot measure solely from its overall economic output. We know that GDP figures mask a host of potential shortcomings. But this is not new. I mean, after you mentioned but my short role as chairman of the development committee at the IMF, the World Bank, despite the fact that that's not necessarily a progressive institution, particularly those times, but there were concerns raised about issues of grinding poverty, about measurement in the World Bank reports, earlier reports about GDP growth and what they call East Asian economic miracle, which does not measure the problems, the plight of the poor, the marginalization of ethnic minorities, those in the hinterland, the rural sector, and also the issue of endemic corruption in many societies and the abuse of power. So the pandemic now will push as many as 150 million people into extreme poverty by the end of next year, according to World Bank report. I mean, these are reports, and most intellectuals look at it just statistics and mention in passing. But mind you, you are talking about 150 million people. And I think this is, from my limited experience looking at it, I still believe it is an understatement. People talk about B40, M40. M40s now are living like B40s. So figures do mislead and lie. Statistics for the matter. So we have also the problem of mass migration of people out of conflict zones. And relevant to your theme, it affects mainly or mostly Muslim countries and Muslim societies. And that would have an impact on the environment, food security, fueling social and political disturbances, and in countries where we assume to be stable and resilient. We see this also in Europe and to an extent now in the United States of America. Now, I've alluded to the fact that I still have hope because America is a vibrant democracy. It's been tested, ridiculed somewhat by the leadership now. And what is encouraging, as I see it, is now the participation of more than 1 million Muslims in America voting in the 2020 elections, a record number. A number of Muslim candidates who were also to win the elections in local and state ballots. One of my interests is also to popularize democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville, because as a Muslim, we know that institutions of governance is not and should not be dictated by the ruling clique. It must be well understood. It's a program of da'wah and ta'iyah, the realization. The whole essence of da'wah is understanding. You talk about unity. Unity is not something which is political, dictated by the ruling clique or elite. It must be well understood and appreciated, and by the masses. Tocqueville used the phrase habits of the heart. I mean, to affect change and to ensure democracy works, it must be from the belief, the conviction, this courage of conviction, which he termed as habits of the heart. And I think this is where, among the Muslims, also lacking. We talk about Islam, but there's always this lack of understanding. When I was involved with Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman and many of the colleagues, our colleagues in the International Islamic University, for example, I've encouraged not only understanding of Islam, but understanding other philosophies of the West, of Confucianism and Hinduism, because so relevant in our societies. Only with that position, we can now demand why the Europeans and the Americans remain so prejudiced against Islam and ignorant. I mean, Edward Said used the term about the clash of ignorance, and I think it was improved, I think, by another scholar talking about illusions of knowledge. So there's a clash. It's not a clash of civilizations, it's a clash of ignorance. Look at what Macron is saying. I mean, an articulate, intellectual, a president of a country, but still, when it comes to talk about another religion, it's still the other, as Edward Said alluded to earlier. So I think it is also a challenge, because then we cannot be accused of being ignorant of the other. And for a country like United States, and we here in Malaysia, although it's predominantly majority Muslims, but we have a substantial number of Buddhists, Christians, Hindus in our society, in our midst, which require us to appreciate, understand, lita'arafu in the sense. So I think coming back to the theme, I would say that since you're scholars of religion, science and ethics, not only need to find ways to work together, but also to make sure that this is well imparted and to the society at large. Our challenge as elites and leaders of Muslim organizations to make sure that the discourse is not among the select few, but the discourse goes back to the masses. Our failure, to a large extent, in my limited experience, is how do you get these principles and ideals of justice, of fairness, of equality to be well transmitted and disseminated to the public at large. Because otherwise we will continue to face this major challenge in our midst because of the lack of understanding. It's incredible to find not only the ignorance of the West towards Islam, but unfortunately in our societies also the ignorance and intolerance of some Muslims against the other. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.